November 12, 1942. The Western Desert, North Africa. The captured American vehicle sat abandoned near a destroyed British supply column. Its crew had fled when their position became untenable. Standard Wehrmacht procedure dictated destroying it or leaving it behind. But the reconnaissance unit's commanding officer had other ideas. Get our best mechanic. I want to know if we can use this thing. What the Afrika Korps mechanics discovered in the next 30 minutes would challenge everything they believed about German superiority. The realization didn't come as a thunderbolt, but as a creeping understanding that grew with each inspection. The small placard on the dash read Willys MB. The Americans called it a Jeep. The first revelation came when they opened the hood. The engine compartment was immaculate, designed for rapid maintenance by anyone with basic mechanical knowledge. Color-coded wires, clearly labeled components, accessible parts that could be reached without specialized tools. In 2 decades of servicing German military vehicles, the senior mechanic had never seen such thoughtful engineering for field maintenance. Every bolt was standard. Every component appeared identical to every other vehicle of its type. Designed for mass production and easy replacement, the Go Devil engine displaced 134 cubic inches and produced 60 horsepower at 4,000 RPM. Not impressive by German standards, but the engineering philosophy behind it was revolutionary. This engine wasn't built to be perfect. It was built to be simple, reliable, and above all, producible. By November 1942, the contrast between American and German military vehicle philosophy had become stark. America would produce over 640,000 Jeeps during the war. Germany would manage just over 50,000 Kübelwagens. The Jeep embodied American manufacturing thinking at its finest. Standardized, simplified, designed for mass production by semi-skilled workers using interchangeable parts. The officers approached as the mechanics continued their inspection. "Well, can we use it?" The senior mechanic looked up, choosing his words carefully. "This vehicle is remarkable. It's designed by someone who understands field conditions." One officer frowned. "German engineering is the finest in the world." The mechanic didn't argue. He simply gestured to the four-wheel drive system. "Look at this transfer case. A single lever engages four-wheel drive. One lever. Our Kübelwagens require multiple operations, and most don't have four-wheel drive at all." The Wehrmacht's primary light vehicle, the Volkswagen Type 82 Kübelwagen, was an excellent machine in many respects. Ferdinand Porsche had designed it with typical German attention to detail. It was lighter than the Jeep, used less fuel, and its air-cooled engine eliminated the vulnerability of radiators to enemy fire. But it had one critical weakness. It was rear-wheel drive only. In the soft sand of North Africa, the mountains of Italy, the mud of Russia, that limitation proved devastating. The Jeep, by contrast, could power all four wheels whenever needed. The system was so simple that an uneducated soldier could master it in minutes. The mechanics continued their inspection. The suspension used simple leaf springs, crude compared to the Kübelwagen's sophisticated torsion bars, but infinitely easier to repair in the field. The electrical system was basic but robust. The fuel system could run on almost any grade of gasoline without modification. Most troubling of all was the weight distribution. The Jeep weighed approximately 2,450 pounds compared to the Kübelwagen's 1,540, a difference of 910 pounds. German engineers would have considered this excess weight a flaw, reducing performance and increasing fuel consumption. But the mechanics recognized the method behind the apparent madness. That extra weight translated to durability. The frame was overbuilt, designed to handle punishment that would destroy lighter vehicles. The Americans had decided that reliability under abuse mattered more than optimal efficiency. The unit brought the Jeep back to their forward position. Over the next 3 days, mechanics conducted exhaustive tests. They drove it through soft sand where Kübelwagens struggled. They loaded it beyond its rated capacity. They subjected it to abuse that would have crippled most vehicles. The Jeep absorbed everything. In soft terrain, Where rear-wheel drive vehicles required careful driving and often became stuck, the Jeep simply powered through. The low-range gearing allowed it to crawl over obstacles at walking speed, something the Kübelwagens gearing couldn't match despite its reduction hubs. Word spread through the Afrika Korps. The Americans had a vehicle that outperformed the Wehrmacht's equivalent in almost every meaningful way. Officers and mechanics from other units came to examine it. The reactions followed a predictable pattern: initial skepticism, followed by grudging respect, then dismay as the implications became clear. One supply officer who had worked in German automotive plants before the war spent an afternoon studying the vehicle. His assessment was blunt. This represents a fundamental difference in approach. We build vehicles to achieve engineering perfection. The Americans build them to be manufactured. In total war, that matters more. In late 1942, Wehrmacht intelligence commissioned a study of Allied vehicle production. The results confirmed their worst fears. American factories were producing military vehicles at a rate of thousands per day. Ford's Willow Run plant alone was completing a B-24 Liberator bomber every 63 minutes at peak production. American shipyards were launching Liberty ships faster than Germany could sink them. The statistics revealed a sobering truth. America's 1942 military vehicle production exceeded the total production of Germany, Italy, and Japan combined, and production was still ramping up. The captured Jeep became something of a celebrity in its unit. Soldiers competed for the chance to drive it. Officers used it for forward reconnaissance, trusting its reliability more than their own vehicles. When parts wore out, replacement components were scavenged from other captured Jeeps with disconcerting ease. Everything was interchangeable. By early 1943, the Afrika Korps had captured dozens of Jeeps. Wehrmacht mechanics formed informal networks, sharing maintenance knowledge and spare parts. A black market emerged for captured American vehicles and equipment. A working Jeep could command prices far exceeding its theoretical value because everyone recognized its superiority for desert warfare. Then came May 13, 1943, when the Afrika Korps surrendered in Tunisia. Approximately 250,000 German and Italian soldiers became prisoners. Their war was over, but their education in American manufacturing capacity was just beginning. The contrast between German and American capabilities became impossible to ignore during the journey to captivity. American trucks transported prisoners in quantities that would have required horse-drawn wagons in the Wehrmacht. American Liberty ships, typically built in 5 to 6 weeks at peak production in 1943, carried thousands across the Atlantic. At the prisoner processing center in Oran, Algeria, captured mechanics watched American motorpool sergeants service a fleet of vehicles with casual efficiency that would have been impossible in the Wehrmacht. The motorpool contained dozens of jeeps, trucks, and command cars. Young American soldiers, many barely out of their teens, performed maintenance with speed and confidence. Tools were abundant and readily available. Parts were delivered without requisition delays. Every vehicle used the same basic components, allowing mechanics to service any vehicle without specialized knowledge. One American sergeant who spoke passable German noticed a captured mechanic watching. "You a mechanic?" "I was Afrika Korps vehicle maintenance." The sergeant grinned. "Well, no war for you now, but I bet you got questions. Come on, I'll show you around." The sergeant explained American maintenance philosophy with unguarded honesty. "See, the thing is, we design everything so any farm boy can fix it. Most of our guys never saw a vehicle engine before basic training, so we make it simple. Color-coded wires, standard bolts, everything labeled. We got manuals written for 6th grade reading levels." The captured mechanic examined a disassembled Jeep engine. Every component was clearly marked. The maintenance manual contained detailed illustrations and step-by-step instructions that could be followed by someone with minimal mechanical knowledge. "How many of these do you produce?" The sergeant shrugged. "Hell, I don't know exact numbers, but thousands every week, I'd guess." They keep coming off the production lines faster than we can ship them out. The motorpool contained more vehicles than entire German divisions had possessed, and this was just one small American unit at a forward supply base. The journey from North Africa to American prison camps continued the education. At every stop, prisoners witnessed American production capacity operating at a scale that defied German preconceptions. The port at Norfolk, Virginia, processed thousands of tons of supplies daily with mechanical efficiency. Trains carried prisoners across America in passenger coaches that would have been luxury in Germany, and everywhere were vehicles, cars, trucks, military vehicles awaiting shipment to combat zones. The sergeant explained, "We learned from the last war. We build everything with common components. A bolt from a Jeep fits a truck, fits a half-track, makes logistics simple." At Camp Hearne, Texas, skilled mechanics volunteered for the motor pool. American camp commanders welcomed their expertise because the war effort demanded every available worker. For the next 2 years, German mechanics worked alongside American soldiers, maintaining the vehicles that kept the camp running. American mechanics approached vehicle maintenance with direct practicality. When something broke, they fixed it quickly with whatever was available. When parts weren't available, they improvised. When a vehicle proved unrepairable, they cannibalized it for components and requested a replacement, which arrived within days. One German mechanic befriended an American soldier who had worked for Ford before the war. "Before the war, I worked on the assembly line at Willow Run. That's Ford's bomber plant outside Detroit. Biggest factory in the world. We're building B-24 Liberators. Started production in '42. By the time I got drafted last year, we were completing one bomber every hour. The arithmetic was staggering. 24 bombers per day, over 700 per month. Mass production principles," the American explained. Mr. Ford figured out how to break down complex manufacturing into simple, repeatable steps. A kid fresh off the farm can be trained in a week to install one type of bolt in one location. The American continued. Same thing with Jeeps. Willys Overland makes them. So does Ford. Both plants use identical specifications. Apart from a Willys Jeep fits a Ford Jeep perfectly. They're completely interchangeable. The German mechanic thought about the Wehrmacht's vehicle inventory. Dozens of different truck types, each with unique parts and maintenance requirements. American logistics were streamlined through uniformity. The real genius was that the Americans designed for manufacturability from the start. When the requirements for the Jeep were set in 1940, companies had just 75 days to produce a prototype. American Bantam did it in 49 days. Then Willys and Ford refined the design for mass production. By summer of 1944, prisoners heard rumors of Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy. When news arrived of the landing's success, many felt no surprise. The Allies had the manufacturing capacity to build an invasion fleet that would have taken Germany years to assemble. Thousands of vehicles landed in the first wave alone. Jeeps, trucks, tanks, amphibious vehicles, all carried in purpose-built landing craft manufactured by the thousands. The scale of the operation defied comprehension. 6,000 ships, 11,000 aircraft, 150,000 men in the first wave. In November 1944, news reached the camp of a German offensive in the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge. The offensive relied heavily on capturing American fuel supplies because Germany no longer had sufficient fuel to sustain armored operations. Reports of Operation Grief, Otto Skorzeny's commando operation using captured American equipment, revealed the Wehrmacht's material desperation. The operation failed, and the offensive ground to a halt, not primarily from American resistance, but because German forces ran out of fuel. Spring of 1945 brought news of Germany's collapse. The Red Army closed on Berlin from the east. American and British forces crossed the Rhine and drove deep into Germany from the west. In the camp motor pool, German mechanics continued their work, maintaining vehicles for an army that had defeated their homeland. One afternoon in April, An American soldier approached with news. Germany surrendered. War's over in Europe. The mechanics nodded. They had expected this for months. The repatriation process began in late 1945. One mechanic arrived in Bremen in January 1946. The city was ruins, but amid the destruction, he noticed American vehicles everywhere. Jeeps carrying Allied officers, trucks delivering relief supplies. He approached a motor pool, introducing himself to the American captain in command. "Sir, I am a former Oberfeldwebel of the Afrika Korps, recently repatriated from Camp Hearne, Texas. I am a trained vehicle mechanic with experience maintaining American equipment. Are you hiring civilian workers?" The captain made a note. "We need mechanics desperately. You can start tomorrow." Over the following months, he witnessed the beginning of Germany's reconstruction. American aid poured in, distributed with the same efficiency that had won the war. He worked in the motor pool, training young Germans in American maintenance techniques. Many of his students were former Wehrmacht soldiers, men who needed civilian skills in a Germany that would no longer have a military. He taught them simplicity over sophistication, functionality over perfection, results over theory. By 1947, he had been promoted to supervisor of the motor pool's German civilian staff. The American captain asked, "If you were designing a vehicle for the new Germany, what would it look like?" He replied, "I would adapt the American approach for European conditions. Smaller than a Jeep, more fuel efficient, but maintaining the same philosophy. Common parts, simple maintenance, designed for manufacturing rather than engineering awards." The captain nodded. "Marshall Plan money will rebuild German manufacturing, and German engineers are already studying American methods." In the decades that followed, West German manufacturing adopted American production philosophy while maintaining German attention to quality. The Volkswagen Beetle embodied this synthesis. Simple, reliable, manufacturable in huge quantities, and affordable. Former Wehrmacht mechanics who had worked in American prison camp motor pools returned to Germany with invaluable knowledge. They understood component standardization, efficient parts distribution, and simplified maintenance procedures. By the early 1950s, Volkswagen production ramped up to hundreds of thousands annually. Mercedes-Benz and BMW adopted similar principles, combining German precision with American efficiency. U.S. Army historian Hugh M. reported that German military leaders admired the Jeep more than anything else in the American arsenal because it represented the manufacturing philosophy that had won the war. General George C. Marshall called the Jeep America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. The Jeep embodied principles that transformed not just military logistics, but post-war global manufacturing, standardization, simplification, design for production, and emphasis on reliability over sophistication. At a 1967 Afrika Korps reunion, veterans discussed the vehicles of the war. One former mechanic said, "The Kübelwagen was better engineered in many respects, but the Jeep was better designed for modern war. Four-wheel drive, simpler maintenance, common parts, and producible in quantities we could never match." Another veteran added, "The worst moment for me was realizing that America was producing more Jeeps in a week than Germany produced Kübelwagens in a year. That's when I knew we would lose, not from any particular battle, but from simple mathematics." By the 1980s, West Germany had become one of the world's leading economies. German automotive companies exported millions of vehicles annually, combining quality with efficient production methods. The final Afrika Korps reunion in 1998 featured a restored Willys MB Jeep. Veterans examined it with respect, recognizing it as a symbol of the production capacity that had defeated them and the functional engineering that had shaped post-war Germany. One veteran said, "We built for perfection. They built for production. That was the lesson that rebuilt our nation."